Hi, so welcome back to the ITAM Accelerate process videos. This month we're talking about the invitation to tender process, but many organisations would also call it the RFP process, a request for proposal process.
Right, okay. We love our acronyms, don't we?
We do. So I think a characteristic of many of these advanced processes is that they are owned by people outside of software asset management. We ran through, in the foundation kit, we've included operational processes which are owned by software asset management, or many of them are, so you've got much more direct control over them. Whereas I think part of the reason why we see these as being advanced is because they're owned by other parties, and in this case it's sourcing or contract management, whatever you call it in your organisation. And so our ability to change the processes is limited to our ability to influence these stakeholders. So I think that's something that we're really seeing as a common theme of these advanced processes so far, isn't it? This is the third in a row that is owned by somebody outside of software asset management. So it's a fairly straightforward process, and we've just sort of said you do boom, 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 boom. If we were a sourcing team writing this process, I'm sure that they would see it as being much more complex than this. So bear in mind that this is pretty much just we've written it as a fairly straightforward process so that software asset managers actually understand what's going on and can see the points at which they need to contribute to and influence the sourcing team that is running this process. So we feed into it from, for instance, you might have an existing contract for a particular piece of software or support and maintenance, and you want to go out to see if there's a potential vendor, alternative vendor that can fulfill those requirements. We might have project management. So, for instance, there might be a project that is implementing a new piece of software, or a new functionality for the business, and so they're going out and saying, right, what software is going to fulfill the requirements of this, of the project. We also have, of course, leading into here from the procurement process. So
it could be certain value as tripped when a request has come in for a purchase.
That's right, yes. Yeah. If it's over a certain amount, it might need to go to the sourcing team to go out to tender, that's correct, yep. And then, of course, we might have supplier management, the SAM supplier management process, which is all about managing your...
third parties, isn't it?
Yeah, your SAM service providers. So you might actually be thinking, right, we need a new SAM services provider, let's go out to tender. So you would normally not do this on your own. You would normally have a team. So you'd get the team together, you draft your invitation to tender or your request for proposal as a team, put together some assessment criteria to say, right, this is how we're going to assess the proposals when they come back and decide which is the best one. You would normally then shortlist some vendors. So just pull together the vendors, do some research and then pull together a list of vendors that you think might be able to fulfill your requirements. Then you send it out. You wait for maybe 3 weeks, maybe have some question and answer sessions, and then you get the tenders back. Now, with those question and answer sessions, one thing that's quite important, and I always quite enjoy this, is making sure that all of the suppliers that are tendering or that you sent the tender out to have exactly the same information. So what you can do is you can say to them, right, if you've got any questions, send the questions to us in writing and we'll respond. And what you do is you put all the questions together and then you write out your answers, your responses to the questions, and then you send all of the questions back out to everybody. So that's how you should do that. So to try and make the process as fair as possible.
Just to leap in there as well, that the one thing about these processes is they don't offer a timeline along the bottom as well.
No, that's true.
So calling out when you're expecting tenders to come back in by and letting them know what the duration of your review period is actually going to be for any tenders that they submit. It just cuts down on the potential calls and the communications. Did you receive our tender? When are you reviewing it? When are you going to make a decision? If you declare that from the outset, then at that point it just, like I said, it just cuts down on a lot of white noise.
Yeah, no, good point. So you get your tenders back from the vendors. You respond. You assess them. You might go back with some questions to them, for instance, and then you decide who you're going to go with. And then you move into you have to tell them that they've won and tell the people who haven't won that they've not won. Although you might want to wait just in case. And this is, again, is something that organisations sometimes do. They will wait until they're a fair way down the contract negotiation process before they inform the losers, so that they can then maybe decide, actually, this isn't working, we'll go with somebody else. Then you negotiate the contract, which we've put in as a different process, and we've put that in as a white process because, contract negotiation is its own specific skill. And then we need to actually put it through the procure to pay and pay down our money and agree the contract. So like we said, it's a relatively straightforward process, but it's something that a software asset manager will often be advising on, particularly around functionality, around helping to calculate what licenses might be required, understanding the impact of the license terms and conditions, for instance. So software asset manager through this is playing more of an advisory role rather than driving this process themselves.
Yeah. The one thing that sort of screams out at me with regards to this is as well how the public sector actually operate with regards to communications as well, and publication of decisions as well, for the purposes of transparency and good governance in the government. You typically see that when the award of a contract goes out, it's made public information, not just the decision, but as to why they arrived at that decision as well. So if you were one of the runners-up or one of the losers, depending on how you look at it, you're in a position to at least ask why a competitor got it over your bid. So there's a lesson learned experience there for the people who submitted the tenders.
Yeah, and the other thing is that for many organisations, particularly large ones, this will actually happen as an electronic process now. So you'll publish the RFP or the tender on an electronic e-procurement platform and receive them back, and do a lot of it electronically these days. I've never actually used an e-procurement platform. I've always done it manually. I think that's just because the organisations I have worked in are often not quite so mature.
Yeah. Well, I think that was just that thing as well. Is when we were in the EU, the good old days. If it was over a certain amount, the tender didn't just go national; it had to go European wide as well. So those portals, tended to spring up. Yeah. They were quite commonplace these days, I think.
Yeah, and actually this process is a bit like the recruiting for a new employee. You do what you can to make it as fair as possible, but the reality is that often it just is going to boil down to a gut decision by the people making the decision, and then everything else is justifying why they've made the decision that they made. So it's one of those things, really. You try and make it as fair as you can, but the reality is that, as with so many things, it's all about gut instinct.
It is, and I guess past performance as well. Maybe if you're going to customize this and take it to your happy place, look to see if your suppliers, your resellers, your vendors, your publishers, etc., if you've dealt with them in the past, and see if they fit your new view of the world and the new way of working, and whether you feel they're appropriate people to do business with. Because I think again, you can get too spreadsheety and pounds, shillings and pence with this. But post-contract, of course, you still have to do business with these people, with these organisations. And if it's going to be an uphill slog based on a saving of 2 or 3%, you'll pay more than the 2 or 3%. So,
of course, that depends on your organisation. If you're in a very low margin organisation, the 2 or 3% is everything. Anyway, it is what it is.
Yes. So, yes, indeed.
So there we go. That's a run through of the invitation to tender process. But as we said, we don't own this. We just contribute to it, and it will probably be much more complex in your own organisation.
Certainly.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, see you later.
All right. Take care. All the best.